know from the evidence that the common sense of the common people is much more powerful than the so-called elite knowledge of the insiders on top. Look at this airplane over here. Look at this airplane over here. Just give me a second here. Let's reflect on the history of air travel. When did we get the first heavier than air flying machine, the first airplane? Anybody know? 1903. We got a smart common man back here, right? So at the beginning of the century, if you had asked anyone who's going to invent the first airplane, they all would have said the same person, Samuel Pierpont Langley. He was a friend of the President of the United States, a regular at the White House, a good personal friend of Alexander Graham Bell. He was the 4th Secretary of the Smithsonian. He had the biggest grant that the U.S. War Department had ever provided, all for the purpose of inventing an aircraft that could fly, that was heavier than air and could carry a man. So he was obviously the one that would do it. And most important, his competition were a couple of simple guys from Ohio. A couple of brothers. They owned a bicycle shop. And they worked in their little shed trying to plan how they could create a plane. And so the two different teams set off on their race to make men fly. And how did they do it? Well, here Samuel Langley hired a big staff, went to a lot of conferences, attended a lot of meetings, met with a lot of important government officials. These two brothers from Ohio, they got busy in their shack. They studied how seagulls flew so that they could understand the aerodynamics of flight. They then created little airplanes out of small sticks and pieces of wood, and they put them in tiny wind tunnels that were created by fans powered by gas because they didn't even have electricity in their sheds. And then they took those little airplanes and they made them into bigger ones, and they transported them with a whole pile of wood all the way over to North Carolina, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. And they created gliders, and they had to bring extra wood because they knew they'd crash these gliders so many times that they'd have to rebuild them. One brother would run holding on to the wing as the other one was inside, and they go down Kill Devil Hills again and again, crashing over and over again. So what happened? Well, in early December of 1903, Samuel Pierpont Langley launched his flying machine off the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., the capital of government, with all the important eyes there to see it. It went straight up in the air, straight down into the water, and sunk to the bottom of the river. He buried his head in his hands and said his life was a failure, and he gave up. 1 week later, the two brothers launched their aircraft, and it too crashed. But they did not give up. For the next 2 days, they would work nonstop to reassemble that aircraft. And on December 17th, 1903, the first flying machine would take flight, and man would be given wings and taken to the skies. This beautiful story of entrepreneurship reminds us of the triumph of the citizen over the state, the individual over the institution, the entrepreneur over the bureaucracy. See, because since the dawn of our species, we have gazed up to the heavens in admiration of the birds. But in this wonderful story, we learn that the citizen, the two brothers, the Wright brothers, did what the mighty state could not: give man wings and make him fly. That is the triumph of the common man and the common woman.